Hey, welcome back to our Doom 3 Editor series. This is part 3. In today's episode, we're going to take a basic look at triggers and how to set them up. And since in the last video we took a look at how to arm our player, in this episode we're going to look at how to disarm the player. And finally, we're going to illustrate how to add those funky storage cabinets to our map, the ones that we found in our Doom 3 walkthrough. So kick back and join me. Alright, so here we are on the Doom 3 Editor in our M1 map. And as always, we have a little bit of housekeeping. First thing you'll notice if we look up here in the render window to the left, we'll just render that out real quick. I put in a nicer ceiling texture. Yeah, that other one was just too hideous, so I did fix that. Now, of course, these textures are far from finished, but at least those are kind of pleasing to the eye. I find it really disconcerting just working on a map with really hideous textures. Okay, so ceiling done. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to clean up the map and get rid of a few things here. So what we're going to do is shift left mouse button. Let's get rid of all these weapons that we gave the guy. Let's get rid of the monster, pistol guy. And to get rid of them, we hit backspace, not delete, backspace, so that gets rid of those. And then we're going to come down here to our little arm the player setup, and we can go in here to get rid of this stuff, and we can select all 6 brushes and all the entities. A lot of work. I'll show you a really quick way to do that. We're going to draw out a brush, and we just want to make sure that everything that we want to select is inside that brush. So let's jump around to the different perspectives, make sure everything is contained. There it is. Let's leave that brush selected. It's red. And we're going to come up here to selection. And we're going to go to select, and we got a few different ways we can do this, but we're going to hit this one here, select inside. So basically we're just telling the editor, select everything that's inside that brush that we drew. So let's go ahead and click that, and then we'll see all these items inside are selected, and that brush we drew is gone. We can see everything selected. So again, if we have a little sequence with tons of stuff in it, and we want to get rid of it all, instead of individually clicking on them, we can do it this way. So let's hit our backspace key, not delete, and get rid of those, and we got a nice clean map. The rest of it we're going to leave just because it'll come in handy. So that's done. Now the last thing, for 2 videos I was bumbling around with this texture trying to get this brush size so it's friendly to this texture, and of course the mistake I was making as I was using the render window and going by the texture, like the physical look of the texture, probably the dumbest way to do it. However, like some textures it works, but in this one it was really throwing us. So let's just hide that real quick, and then let's go to, remember we drew this brush, and this is a natural, and this is this texture that we're trying to get right, and it's in its natural state. So if we click it, we go here, let's hide everything except that brush. So let's do Shift Control H. And then we can see if we select the brush and we got the brush sizes, the natural is 128 by 128. That's the size that the artist drew it in. And 128 by 128 pixels likely. And for us, it's 128 grid. So you'd think if we just double that, it should be 256, right? So let's unhide everything. So Shift H, go back here. Let's grab this brush that we were trying to fiddle with. Let's hide everything except that brush, just for convenience. We can see if we select it, it's 240. It should be 256, right? So if we just shift it up, we've got 256. And we almost hit it because we know we should have been on that grid line. And that's what helps using like a 16 grid. So it kind of helps us out here. But now we have to adjust all 4 walls, and then we have to move our ceiling up. So let me just do that real quick. So we'll unhide everything. Control H. There we are. And we want to grab this brush, and you can see it's 240, bring it up to 256. Grab this guy, bring him up to 256. Grab this guy, bring him up to 256. There we are. And all we have to do is lift our ceiling because we don't want this overlapping joint, right? Goes back to first map best practices. There we go. So we got this kind of butt joint here. Okay, so that's done, and now we can see how that's supposed to look if we render that, you see? And we can see all our corners are nicely lined up. We don't have to resize textures, we don't have to shift them. We can do that, and we will do that, but let's start off right and get this right off the top, and we'll find mapping is much more enjoyable. So we can check that off our list. So let's take a look at some triggers. Okay, so we've saved our map, and it's time to look at some triggers. Now, triggers are basically the building block of Doom 3. You'll notice that when I'm in the playthrough, I kind of inch ahead when I play. That's because I know those developers at id are going to hit me with a trigger anytime soon. And as its name implies, Basically, a trigger is just an entity we place on the map, and when the player steps into its volume, it makes something happen. And we can just about do anything with triggers. We can turn a light on, we can put up a hint, open a door or unlock a door, just a myriad of different events that we can make happen with our triggers. And they're quite simple. So let's put one on the map real quick here. So what we want to do is basically, first thing I like to do, again, I like to work with the texture loaded already, and I haven't got the right one loaded. So let's go into our media file and go into textures again, and let's go into common, and we're going to look for our texture. Kind of makes sense, right? Okay, where are we here? I'm sorry, trigger. Yes, there we go. So we have that selected. Should be in our media window now. Is it? It is. Can't see it. I don't want to deselect. Anyway, let me draw one in here real quick. Okay, there it is there, and it's loaded the texture up. Okay, so there it is. And as you can see, we can make it any size. I mean, we can make it one grid, 1 unit by 1 unit if we really wanted to, but you know, it's going to be kind of hard for the player to hit it. One thing I might want to mention too, if you do draw out, well, okay, we'll cover that in a second. So there it is there. Now it's not a trigger yet. All this is just a brush with a trigger texture, and the texture just lets us know when we're, you know, looking around the map that this here thing is a trigger. That's basically all that does, not a trigger yet. So there it is. And now again, we can size it any way we want. So what we're going to do is we're just going to size it big. So if the player jumps, we're just going to sort of put it right in front of him just so we can kind of trip it. Now if you have to put that trigger somewhere else on the map, of course when you compile the map, that's not going to show up once it's a trigger entity. And if you want to know where it is, you can always just put a little different texture, something contrasting on the floor, put the trigger on it, just so you know when you're running around, you just have to run over that little panel and there's your trigger. But anyways, this will make sense as we go on here. So it's just a dumb brush with a trigger texture on it. And to make it a trigger is really simple. We just select it, and we go here on the XYZ map and right mouse click. And then we want to bring up, let's see here, I think it should just be trigger. Yes, it is. There it is, kids. And we can see we have all kinds of different ones. Trigger touch, trigger timer, relay, pre-size, once, all kinds of different things. And I think we'll discover some of these as we go along, but feel free to play. We're going to concentrate on this guy, trigger once. And if we press that, basically that brush now becomes a trigger. And we can confirm that a couple different ways. If we look here on the XYZ, we can see that it has its origin, which we talked about. And here in the render window, again, there's the origin. And then other thing we could do is if we select it and we go down to entity, now we see trigger once. So there it is. So as its name implies, trigger once. Once the player hits it, it's gone out of the map. The only way we can replace it is if we replay the map, but again, it's very handy for certain things if we just want something to trigger once. Okay, so there's a trigger. Now it's just going to sit there until we actually tell it what to do, and that's pretty simple too. So let's go on XYZ in top view. Now I could just turn on a light or do something mundane, but let's do something a little fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to right mouse click here, and I'm going to go down to monsters. Let's see if we could find it. Don't forget it's alphabetical. There it is. And we're going to look for the monster demon imp, monster_demon imp, and let's put him into the map. And there he is. Let's put him facing on the floor. And then what we want to do is that we want to have him facing us, so when he spawns in, he's going to attack us. So we can just go down here in our entity window, hit this 180 to turn him around, and we can see there he is facing us. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, which I started a little bit before, but now that we actually have a trigger, I can show it. If you actually create a trigger entity and it doesn't show up in the map, very likely what you have up here is in view, show, you have triggers deselected. And if you look down here, now this isn't in alphabetical order, but we can see, where's our trigger? Trigger. There it is here. If we have that unselected, you see it hides. So even though we have a trigger there, we're going to be hiding it. And that hide feature is just handy if you have a lot of entities and you just want to kind of hide a few different things. So let's go back and view it again. Show triggers. Okay, we have it here. Now, as we discussed, this trigger has to be connected to the monster. And again, the sequence is important. So again, shift, left mouse button, select that. Shift mouse button, select the imp. Very important, that sequence. First the trigger, then the entity. And if you remember, we have to connect those. And the quick way of doing that is Control K. There it is there. And we want to look for a path. We can see it's going from the texture once into the monster with the arrows pointing this way. So that's all good too. And again, make sure show, right? View, show. You can see those paths, right? Just make sure. We talked about that in the last video. So that's all connected. Now, if we were to save this, which we're going to do, and compile it and play it, as soon as we step through that trigger, this monster's just going to pop out of nowhere right in front of us. It's going to look a little goofy. We could hide him behind something or whatever. That's too much work. Now, if you noticed in the Doom 3 playthrough, I think we got this far, but these imps, and most of the monsters actually in the game, have this really funky animation, and we want to play that when he spawns in, and that's that sort of lightning and sounds, the demonic sounds and the pentagrams. That's what we want here. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the monster, and we're going to go down into our entity window here, and we're going to put just one key value in here. It's very simple. So we're just going to type in the area that says key. We're going to put in, let's see here, teleport. And actually, okay, let's do that, teleport, and then tab, and then just hit the number 1 and then enter. Now actually, and you can see it took here. Okay, now actually it does give us that hint up here. If we read it, we can actually find teleport. Let's see, teleport. It's in here. You have to take my word for it if I can't find it fast. Might have even missed it already, but in here it does say teleport and explains what it does and explains how to set it up. So yeah, I could look through it, but I'm not going to. It's up here if you want. Oh, there it is, teleport. Yeah, if set, monster teleports in when triggered. That's what we want. So that's why we put teleport and 1 to turn it on. Okay, and that's set up, and we can see it's there. Good. That's all we need to do. Let's save it. Oh, one other thing. Let's just dim this light a little bit here just to accentuate that that effect. So we'll go J into our light editor. We'll talk about lights more, but let me just dim this a little bit. And if I can remember how to do that. Let's see here. Brightness. I think you have to go color. And then go down here like so. Okay, I think that's got it. Oh, I haven't used this in a long time. Okay, let's do that. Save. Let's compile it. BSP F2 to go into the game. Title, because we fixed that, right? Title. And then we go map M1 and we hit enter. All right, let's see what we got. And we're in window mode, don't forget. We have to be in window mode for the editor. Okay, so you see we don't see that trigger, but if we step forward, something funky should happen. So let me hold my breath. Ooh, 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 there it is. Ooh, we just have a pistol. Ooh. So we doesn't do a jump attack. Oh, hey, missed. Ooh, there we go. Ooh, so I could have given him like a BFG, but we went with the pistol. So there it is, just a quick trigger and how to bring a monster in. I guess you kind of got a 2-for-1 there, but that's the basics of trigger and spawning the imp in with the demonic animation. So we'll take that off our list and let's move on. And what do we got next? Right, so before we go stampeding into those locking cabinets, I did promise I would demonstrate how to strip the player of weapons. That is, take all the weapons away. And to start, I think I just want to clean up the map a little bit. We're probably going to get rid of this trigger and this imp here. Now, we could just select the trigger, move it out of the way so the player can't touch it, resize it small. But I think just for ease, we're going to just delete everything. So let's grab that there imp, and let's just hit back key and get rid of him, backspace. And the trigger one, same thing, backspace. Oh, all that glorious work, but there it goes. Let's save and get the annoying message. All right, so now as we know, the default info player start, or the spawn, gives the player his fists and a pistol to start. Just to kind of accentuate this sequence though, what I want to do is I want to give him a shotgun. And in the past video I showed you, I think it was 4 ways how to give the player a weapon. Well, here's number 5. So we're going to right click and we're going to head down to weapon. And let's find that shotgun, not _MP, but just weapon _shotgun. Let's put that in the map. And we want to, you know me, I like to orientate things nicely on the map, so I'll just go into entity and give that a 90-degree turn. Then what we have to do is put that weapon and just make sure it touches the player's spawn. Just anywhere, make sure it touches. So I'm just doing that right now. All right, and let's save and compile that real quick so I can just demonstrate. Oh, we didn't compile. Let's get out of here. Quit. Oops. Can also type exit. Okay, there we are. And we just need to compile this. So we'll save it again just to be sure. Compile. All right, and let's go into the map now. Map. M1. Enter. All right, we can see we have the shotgun. So if I press 2, I've got the pistol. 1 is the fists. And there's the shotgun. All right, so let's get out of here. Okay, so we have that. Now, to set this sequence up is quite simple. And what we're going to do first is just going to do a trigger. And we know how to do this by now. So let's just make sure our trigger texture is selected, which it is. Let's draw out a brush. A nice big brush so we're sure we run into it. And high, so in case the guy jumps. And let's make it wider. And let's stay on major grid lines. There we are. Very nice. Is that touching the floor? No, it's, yeah, is it? Yep. Okay, we're good there. Don't forget, it's just a brush. So if we select it, right click, we want to look for trigger once. Done. Okay, it's got its origin, so we know it's a trigger once. And one more entity that we want to put in here, and this is the sort of the magical one, is right click. We want to look for target. And we want to find remove weapons. So alphabetical, there it is, target, remove weapons. And let's put that thing in the map. Okay, its position looks pretty good. Might be able to come out a little bit. And we have to tell this thing what weapons to actually take out. So we're going to go into our entity window and make sure that it's selected. And I'm just going to show you the key value convention here. So the first key we have to type in is weapon. And then tab, and then what we want to type in here is def underscore weapon and 1, and hit enter. And the convention here is that if we want to take away the shotgun, we have to do it like this. Oops, okay. All we have to do actually is just change this and type in weapon 1. And then here we have to type in, fix that number 1 to number 2. So for the second slot, we want weapon 1, and then the value, we want def underscore weapon 2, and we put that there. And that sort of coincides with the weapon slots. So def weapon 1 would be pistol, def weapon 2 would be shotgun, def underscore weapon 3 would be the machine gun. I believe the rest of it is chain gun and grenades. I'll let you figure that out. But you sort of get the sort of the convention that we're getting at here. And if you want to make sure you get all the weapons, just make sure that you get up to def underscore weapons 11. So the last key value would be weapon 10 for the key, and then def underscore weapon 11 for the actual value. And that's going to hit all the weapons. So that's set up. Now, if you remember, we have to connect the trigger to the trigger target remove weapon. And that sequence is important, so we're going to click trigger first. We're going to hit that remove weapon. Then we're going to hit our control K key to connect them. We're going to look for that yellow line, which is hard to see, but that's our path. And that's it. We're set up, ready to go. So let's save that. Okay. Let's compile it. Let's go into the map. Okay, there we are. Now we can see we have the shotgun, we can see we have the pistol, the fists. Let's put up the shotgun. Now I'm just going to move forward. I'm not going to touch any of the keys. And once we hit that, we can see it in real time. It took away that shotgun. And I assure you, I'm hitting 3 and nothing's coming up. I'm hitting 2 where the pistol should be. Nothing is coming up. 1, we still have our fist though, thank goodness. So let's get out of here. And just the last point about where to place this trigger. In the actual Doom 3 game, the id developers, what they did in the Hell level is at the beginning of the level, the player gets stripped of all his weapons. And for us, what we could do is we could take that trigger and we could move it right over the player's spawn. And we could just draw it around the player if we want. But if we move it into the spawn, we're sure that at runtime or when the game starts, that weapon, target remove weapon is going to be triggered. And whatever the player's collected, even if he collected them in past levels, if this is a campaign or a series of maps, that's going to make sure that strips everything away from the player. So in a nutshell, that's for how to remove weapons, fairly simple. And I hope that illustrates that. And I think we're ready to do our fancy little cabinets here. Alrighty then, so let's go ahead and put in this cabinet. Now, this cabinet entity is a little bit more complex than I originally thought, and we'll see that as we progress here, but I'll show you a little workaround a little bit later, and this will make it a little bit easier, and it'll all make sense as we illustrate it. So first things first, XYZ window, let's right click, and what we're looking for here is an environment underscore storage cabinet, that entity there. So here we are, environment. Let's look for storage cabinet. It's alphabetical, so we have to scroll down. Let's scroll down. There we go. Environment underscore storage cabinet. We're not going to use the one with the open back. We're going to use this one here. Environment storage environment underscore storage cabinet. So we're just going to click that, and that puts that in our map. And if we look in our render window, we can see it there. It doesn't really look like much yet, but we're going to get there in a moment. Okay, let's put it back there. Okay, so let's keep it selected. Now, to make it look like a storage cabinet, most entities in Doom 3 have animations attached to them. So we're going to attach that animation to this thing. We're not going to get too much into that animation explanation, but take my word for it. Okay, so we're going to go into our entity window here. And in this key line, what we're going to type in here is anim tab, and we're going to call the animation called open. So we're going to type that in there. We're going to hit enter, and there we can see our cabinet finally popped up. So let's just orientate that properly. There we go. Let's put it on the floor. And let's put it back against the wall. And let's just take it a little bit farther away from this wall. Okay, there we go. There's our storage cabinet. So we'll just deselect it, and we can see it there. Now, if we save this and compile it, all we have is just a storage cabinet that sits there. It doesn't do anything, and we can see that's missing that nice little GUI there. So let's build that GUI real quick. So let's select the cabinet. Let's hide everything except the cabinet just for sake of ease here. Okay, so there we go. So first thing we want to do is draw a brush. And I'm going to go into my texture tab. I'm going to just select my cock brush. I just want to get the front view of this cabinet, which is there. And let's go to a grid of 1 to 1 because we're going to be drawing a brush here smaller than 16 by 16. So let's just draw that out. And we want a size of 12 wide and 15 high. Seems to work pretty good. So there it is. Doesn't have to be very thick. There it is. Okay, let's get a little closer to it in our entity window. Okay, so there it is. Now, what we want to do is we want to turn this brush into a patch mesh, actually. And that's really easy to do, and I'm not going to talk about patch meshes, but they're handy brushes that have a height and a width, but very, very little depth. And also, it only renders one side. It gives us one usable texture side, and the other one doesn't render. So it's kind of handy for things. And we'll see more how to use patch meshes in future videos, but let's just run with it now. So first thing to do is we just go up here to patch and simple patch mesh, and what we want to do is just click that. We'll leave that setting at 3 to 3. We'll hit OK, and there we have our patch mesh, and it just appeared on us. Where did it go? Where did it go? Okay, it just got buried in the cabinet. Okay, there it is there. And its orientation is wrong, so we're going to have to flip that around. So where are we here? There we are. So we'll just go up here to these buttons. They just flip stuff on the X and Y and Z. This is kind of tricky here. I'm going to see if I can get it right, which I never do. We got to get it facing the right way here. Z, there we go. And Y, there we go. And is it the right size? Okay, it's size adjusted. So 12 by 15. Okay, there we go. Got that sorted out. All right. Now, we just want to put a GUI texture on here, not this cock texture, just so we know when we're flying around the map this is a GUI. Now, we haven't loaded it into our texture window here, so we're just going to go into textures and our common folder here that we like, and we're just going to go for GUI entity, and there it is there. Now, we're going to just go into our surface inspector S. Oh, what happened there? Oh, come on, GUI entity, there we go. And we're going to click on our XYZ window, we're going to hit S, and we're going to bring up this inspector, and we're just going to hit this fit, just so it fits there. Okay, it's flipped, so we're just flip X, oops, flip X, flips Y. There we go. Now we got the proper orientation, so we're good there. All right, so now what we have to do is if we want to control the cabinet with this patch mesh, we have to turn this into a func static. We're not going to talk about func statics too much today. We'll get into that later videos, but take my word for it. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this into a func static. So XYZ window, right click, and we're going to find func static. So here's func, and we're going to look here, and we're going to go into static. There we go. I'm going to turn it into a func static. It's got its origin. And also if we click into entity window, we can see that it's a func static. Good. Now, we have to actually attach a GUI there. So we're gonna select it, and we're gonna go here into our key, and we're gonna type in GUIS tab, and then we're just gonna erase that 270, and we're gonna go down here into our GUI tab in our entity window and just click on that. And then in this file folder, we want to find GUIs. Okay, and we want to find control panels / cabinet GUIs. So we're going to go to control panels, which is this, and we're going to find cabinet GUI, and it's alphabetical order, and there it is there, cabinet GUI. Okay, where are we? Cabinet GUI, and we're going to hit OK, and that attaches that GUI to that. And actually, if we get kind of close to it here, let's see if I could show you this, and we render it. Let's select it, deselect it, and we can render that. And there we can see it's attached to that GUI. Okay, so that's done. So let's get out of that and go back into our map. Now there's a few parameters we have to give this GUI in order to make it work the way we want to do it. So we're going to select it, and we're going to go down to our entity window. And what we want to do first is attach a sound to it. So when the player clicks the buttons, it chirps at us. We don't need this sound shader, but we'll put it in anyways because it just kind of livens up that GUI a little bit. So we're going to go down here into our key window, and we're going to type in s_shader and tab. And here we're just going to put this in manually, GUIs and sounds. That's all we put in here. GUI sounds. We got to get it precisely right. GUI sounds. And that's it. Hit enter. Okay, so that's the sound shader attached. And we can see it took here. Now the actual code. Now most well, in this case, func statics have a number of parameters that we can put in. And in order to put in our code, we want to put in GUI parameter 1, 2, and 3. We'll keep the code simple. You know, we'll go with a code of 1, 2, 3. So here's how we set that up. We go into the key window, and we want to type in GUI_parm for parameter, parm1, tab, and this is going to be our first number of the code. So we'll just type in a number 1, and we'll hit enter. And we can see here, GUI_parm1 is 1. Now we want to go parm2. We don't have to retype it. We can just go here, backspace, hit a 2, tab, and we can delete that. And we'll put in a 2, and we'll hit enter, and there's that. We can see it. And finally, parm3. We'll just put a 3 there, tab, delete that. We'll put in a number 3, enter, and there we are. Okay, so we've got our parameters 1, 2, and 3, and that's our code 1, 2, 3. Done. Okay, now there is a little space here that we can actually type in some sort of descriptor for this GUI. Now, in id that does it through this convention is they call a string, and we're not going to get into the string file today, but we can manually type in what we want this to say. So we're going to go in here, and this is the parameter 4, so we can just adjust that GUI_parameter 4, tab. We can type something in here, and when we render it and all that, we'll see that in a moment. So let's just delete that. We're going to type in, say, I don't know, goodies. So goodies, there we go, hit enter, and if we scroll down, we can see that it took, okay, there it is, so goodies. Now one last parameter we can put in here, and that's parameter 5. This is important because we can actually number this cabinet. Now, if we don't put in GUI_parameter 5, it defaults to 009, but we're going to give it a custom number. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to put in the number 666. Okay, it's a little cliche, but this will make sense in a moment. Usually you give the player code through give them the cabinet codes through a GUI. And in the case where, say, the GUI is away from where the cabinet is in a different room or something like that, we want to tell the player that cabinet 666 in this case has a code of 1, 2, 3. So what we want to do is we want to actually number this cabinet, and we do that through this GUI_parm_5. So we got that set up. It says 666. Did we hit enter? No, we didn't. So we'll hit enter. Just select it there, hit enter, and then we should have a GUI_parm of 666. I don't know if we render it, I don't know if all that's going to show, but we can try it. Okay, it's not showing. We'll have to actually go into the game, so that's fine. We'll do that. Okay, now we want this GUI to actually control the cabinet, and we do that because now our GUI is a trigger actually, which is kind of important. So in order for the GUI to control the cabinet, what we're going to do is we're going to select the GUI, we're going to select the cabinet, if we can, select the cabinet. Oh, it's a little tough sometimes because of the bounding box, but okay, so there's the GUI, and there's, okay, so there we are. We got both selected. First the GUI selected, then the cabinet selected, and we're going to hit our Control K, which attaches there. So now they're connected. So basically the GUI is now connecting this thing. So we're actually ready to try this. Let's position the GUI here over this little flat spot on the model. And we have to get it just right. So let's push it out here. There we are. We don't want it to collide or fight Z fighting here, so we're just going to put it 1 unit away from the cabinet, and let's kind of center it nicely here. There we are. Okay, so let's bring everything back. Let's save that. Let's compile it. BSP. And let's go into the map. So F2, title key. Let's bring up our map. Map M1. Hit enter. And hopefully, if everything goes right, our cabinet will be in the map. Okay, and there it is. And we can see the GUI is attached to it. And we should be able to hit 1, 2, 3. Now, before I open it up and show you how it works, here's the wrinkle. This particular entity does have a collision on the front of it. So you can see, oh, see, no, it doesn't have any collision. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. See, it has no collision. And we're going to fix that in a minute. Okay, so obviously it's a bit of a problem. Well, it looks like it has, no, it doesn't have collision on this side anyway. Okay. Let's just test it. 1, 2, 3. It opens up. There we go. We haven't got anything inside of it. We'll put it there. Now, this collision we're going to fix in a moment. It's really annoying. It actually does it in a much more complicated way. I'm going to show you a little bit of an easy workaround. So let's get out of here. Quit. All right. So let's grab that. Let's grab the GUI. Let's hide everything. All right, so there that is. Now, first thing we're going to do is what we want to do is put in a shelf and some ammunition for the guy. So let's just draw that shelf real quick. Go to the top view, and I imported this little shelf texture here, or just it's an arbitrary texture. It'll work for our shelf. So let's just select that. We're going to draw a brush out here, and a good size for this brush is 64 by 21 by 2. So let's go 64 by 21. And we'll just go a thickness of 2. There we go. And let's position it in our cabinet. Doesn't really matter where, as long as it's inside. There we go. And if we look at the side view, we don't want it sticking outside, so we just put it right there, and we can sort of increase the size here. Just make sure it fits within the cabinet, otherwise the brush will stick out. So there's that little shelf. Okay, let's just get rid of the cabinet for now. Just hide it. Okay, and there we have our shelf. Now what we want to do is put on some grenades on there. So let's just right-click XYZ window, go up to ammo. Let's find our grenades. Small, we'll put that there. Okay, there's our grenade. And we'll just put it on the shelf. Let's make sure it's positioned properly. Now here's the problem. This grenade entity actually has quite a large trigger area. That is the area that defines how close the player has to be to pick it up. And if we just leave this grenade entity the way it is, the player will actually be able to grab it without having to open the cabinet because there's no collision on that cabinet entity. So how we're going to fix that is like this. We're going to select the grenade, and we're going to go into our entity window, and the first thing we're going to put in our key line here is trigger first. Trigger and first, one word, tab. We're going to hit 1 and enter. What this is telling that grenade is don't show up on the map until you're triggered. Okay? And we'll trigger that in a moment. All right. And the other key value we want to put this grenade is up here in the key line. So we want to type in, where are we here? Trigger size. Trigger size, one word, tab, and we want to type in 20. And what we're doing is we're defining the size around that grenade that the player has to be inside that volume in order to grab the grenade. So we've basically decreased it to 20. So in other words, the player has to be quite close to it in order to grab it. Okay, so let's deselect that. Now, we've set up this trigger first 1. So basically the grenade isn't going to show up until we trigger it. Now as we know, our entity here, our func static, can act as a trigger because it's basically opening up the cabinet, right? But we can make it trigger the grenade as well. So let's select the func static, our GUI, and then the grenade. And let's do our little control K trick. And there we see the line, it's connected. So basically now we have to type in that code, and once that's triggered, the grenades will show up. Okay, so we've got that. Let's save. Let's bring everything back. Let's save it. Get the annoying pop-up. We'll hit F2. No, we're not going to hit F2. Exit. We have to compile it. We forgot to compile it. Okay, let's go up to compile. BSP. There it is. Okay, all right, so that's all set up. Now, the problem is that collision, right? Now that shelf brush is going to give us some collision, but if the player ducks down or jumps up, he might be able to get under the brush or over the brush. So we're just going to solve that real quick here. What we're going to do is we're going to draw a, let's see here. We're going to go into our media. We're going to draw a clip brush. And what a clip brush basically is a brush that doesn't show up in the map, but it creates a hard surface so the player can't run through it. And we're going to do a clip brush down here and up here so the player cannot run through that cabinet. And it'll create collision. It'll give us kind of a box around the cabinet so we can't run through it. So let's go ahead and draw that first. So let's just select that collision. And let's draw out that brush, and let's put it, no, that's not the one we want. Okay, so undo. We want to put in clip. That's the one we want, clip. So let's draw out that brush, and let's put it the size of the cabinet. So here, we can put it all the way here. Okay, down here. All right, we can't really see it, so let's just hide everything except, well, let's hide the cabinet. All right, so select that, hide it, H. Okay, there we have our clip. So it's inside the cabinet, and it's clipping basically everything underneath that shelf. Let's just tidy it up. There it is. Now we're going to just, we're going to select that clip brush. We're going to clone it. We're going to bring it up here because we don't want the player to be able to jump up on the shelf. Okay, there we go. We'll put that in there. Let's bring back the shelf. There we go. Or actually the cabinet. Let's select that clip brush. Let's just put it down here. We don't really have to do this because we can't see the clip brush anyways. But let's make it the size of the cabinet. Okay, there we go. Size of the cabinet. There we go. So basically, what we've done is create a collision for that cabinet. So let's just save it and compile it. And you'll see that now we have collision. So let's go into the map. F2, title, map. Enter. Okay, and there we are. There's our cabinet. Now, we can see that we have collision now, right? We can't go through it there. We can't go through it there. Can't go through it at the side. But it still works. So we hit 1, 2, 3. And we can't grab the grenades, obviously, we can see. So if we go 1, 2, 3, the cabinet opens. We've got our grenade, and we should be able to grab them. And there they are. So a little bit involved, and we have to do that little clip brush workaround, but that does work. And what we should do is we should tidy up that shelf brush. So let's do that really quick. We're conscientious mappers here. So let's hide that. Let's hide that. Let's grab that shelf. Let's hide everything but the shelf. Let's go up here. Grab that top surface. Control Shift, left mouse button. Let's go our Entity Inspector, S, and let's go Fit. Let's do the front face too, so we'll deselect, hit that front face. Let's bring up the Inspector, Fit, okay. Let's bring everything back, save, BSP, compile. There we go. Let's go back into the map. And everything should be working great because all we did was tidy up that texture. Can't go through it. It's got its collision. Code 1, 2, 3. Open. Grab that grenade, and the shelf looks much nicer. Done. So we can take that off of our list. So we can see it was a little bit more complicated than I originally thought. I actually had to go into the id map and have a look to see how they did it. They did it slightly differently. I'm not going to explain how they did it. It was much more complicated. But I find those two little clip brushes there do the trick. Again, it's got its collision now. And that's how to put cabinets in. So you can put those in your maps now. So that'll do it. So thank you for watching this Doom 3 Editor Series Part 3. As always, I'm going to grovel for subs. So if you're watching the video, just hit that red subscribe button. That really does help us out. And I really appreciate it if you can just smack that button right now. Otherwise, give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, a like, dislike, or drop us a comment. Are you enjoying this Doom 3 Editor Series? What do you want me to demonstrate? If there's something you want me to show, let me know in the comments. And finally, I do have a question. Should I be producing shorter videos, that is breaking them up, that is like make like a dedicated video for triggers, dedicated video for cabinets, or should I be kind of combining, say, 3 segments into one longer video? So let me know what your preference is, because I can adjust that as time goes on. Otherwise, you can go to my channel, see all my videos. That's Tom's World is the name of the channel. You can hit that notification button. It'll give you alerts when we post new videos, and as I said, we're going to have a few new videos coming up shortly. And so again, thank you very much for watching. Stay well and all the best.